Welcome, everyone, to another episode of the Campus Reform PAS Report podcast. Special interview going on. I got a great guest coming up. Before I get to the guest, make sure you go to campusreform.org and follow and subscribe to Campus Reform. Also, visit the pasreport.com, sign up for the newsletter over there, and share this episode with your family and friends and on social media, because what's going on in the country is extraordinarily important. What's going on our college campuses is extraordinarily important. And I want to introduce my guest, CUNY law professor Jeffrey Lax. Jeffrey, I'm so glad you could come on because you could provide some real insights into what you're seeing on college campuses. Welcome to the program.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Well, I wanted to bring you on because I wanted to get your thoughts. So we're about a little bit over a month since the Hamas attacks that slaughtered over 1,400 innocent civilians over in Israel. And the reaction on college campuses has been quite interesting, and that's putting it mildly. What are your thoughts? Are you surprised at what you're seeing on college campuses?
I'm not surprised. Unfortunately, I've been seeing the beginnings of this for about 8 years, and I've been warning people about what's going on behind the scenes for, like I said, nearly a decade, eight or 9 years. And so I've seen the indoctrination behind the scenes. I've seen what the faculty unions do with the millions and millions of dollars that they have. They don't know what to do with their money. They spend it on indoctrinating students, advocating for, these are actual Marxists. It's not a joke. I don't say it, to be melodramatic. They are actual Marxists. They call themselves comrades. They introduce each other to each other at these union meetings as comrades. And Marxism, a lot of people don't know this, goes hand in hand with anti-Semitism. One of the core tenets of Marxism is the destruction of Judaism. That was one of Marx's big things. He called money the jealous God of Israel. And a lot of quotes that people attribute to Hitler was actually things that Marx said. So no, I'm not surprised at all. I've been seeing this for 8, 9 years. I saw this coming and I warned people, and I'm sad that I was right, obviously.
And I agree with you. I mean, the radicalization efforts on college campuses, it's been going on for quite some time. It's now seeped into K through 12 level. Are you surprised the way the administration has come out? I mean, let's be honest here. It's not hard to condemn Hamas. It should be relatively simple, given the nature of Hamas and its entire existence is to see the destruction of Israel and the Israeli people. But you have these administration officials that have like twisted themselves into a pretzel in order to try and not outrightly condemn Hamas. Are you surprised by the reaction of these officials?
I'm extremely hurt. I feel stabbed in the front, not in the back. Like I think like a lot of other Jews feel. Am I surprised? Listen, this is a strategy. This is not about, it's interesting the way you phrase that question, because you're asking, well, it's easy. You're saying something that's obviously true. It's so easy to condemn the raping of innocent civilian women, of any woman for any reason. The truth is, no matter what anybody does, right, there's no excuse to rape somebody, right? So I don't even have to say civilian. To defend a group that raped women, that beheaded children, it's so hard for me to say, but I force myself, that set children on fire alive, that did these things. Yes, of course, it's easy to condemn. These are not people who are thinking rationally. They're not people who are able to think rationally and like normal, sympathetic human beings. They're people whose focus is on an ideology and any means, and they say it themselves, any means to the end. The people who are rallying right now are saying, whatever it takes, whatever we need to do. These are not reasonable people. They're not rational people. They're not humane people. So we're not dealing with people that people like you and I can relate to. But it does hurt. And especially when it's, like you said, academics or administrators. You like to think that an administrator acts with some degree of, rationality. But we're not seeing that. And it's sad.
And what does it say about our profession when we don't see that? I mean, I hear professors out there that are actually condoning Hamas's activities. They're pushing lies and propaganda. They're pushing anti-Semitic beliefs. what does it say about our profession that this is the cesspool it's become?
And I also don't think it's just anti-Semitism. I think it's anti-Americanism. I think this doesn't stop with the Jews. This is not about just destroying Israel. If you look closely at all these rallies, which are led by union faculty leaders, and students, students a lot of times are duped. They don't even know what they're saying. The students don't know what they're talking about. Half the students chanting from the river to the sea don't even know what that means. Ask them what river it is and what sea it is. They have no idea.
No.
Right? They don't know what they're doing.
They can't even point to Israel on a map.
Right? No, they can't. But the thing is that the people who are organizing these things, they're doing so with, like I said, any means to an ends. And the ends that they want is Marxism. Is that the ends that they really want is the end of Western civilization. If you look closely at these rallies, you'll see that it says the end of capitalism. Like if you look closely at the bottom of some of these signs, you'll see that a lot of them are Marxist movements. They blame capitalism. They blame Western culture. They blame Western civilization. A lot of them are putting out propaganda saying, don't believe the Western propaganda about the war in Israel. What? Don't believe the West. So what are they saying exactly? We should believe who? Hamas's propaganda?
Yeah, of course.
China's propaganda, Iran's propaganda. Who are we to believe? And they're telling this to us. It's like what everyone keeps saying on TV now. All talking heads are saying, when someone tells you who they are, believe them. They're telling us, and reasonable people, I think a lot of them are coming over, but still some are not totally getting it.
Well, and I think that frustrates me about academia, because academia is supposed to be about the pursuit of truth. I mean, that's essentially what it's supposed to be. And yet you have people that are blatantly reject it. But I'm glad you brought up the idea of anti-Americanism, anti-Western civilization, and anti-Semitism, because they do all go hand in hand. I've been harping on it on the PAS report over the last few weeks. When we see the problem really began with anti-Americanism, that it was accepted on college campuses, where if you wanted to hold a protest for, let's say, a pro-America rally, you were relegated to a free speech zone on some obscure part of a college campus. Yet we're hearing from a group of protesters, and these are not small protests, these are large protests. We're hearing them call for the annihilation of Israel and the entire Jewish community, the Israeli people over in Israel, and the Arab and Islamic community in Israel, because there are Arabs and Islamic people that live in Israel. And yet they could freely push that message anywhere they want. But if you want to do a pro-American rally, well, no, you can't speak in the main campus squares. You have to go to the free speech zones. I know you said 8 years ago you started to see the change, but when did we become blinded to truth and reality?
You mean good people? You mean good people? You mean reasonable people?
Yeah.
When did we become blinded to it? I think. Listen, I think one major culprit is the unfettered open borders. So if you look at the people who are coming here from, we don't know who they are. We don't know.
And they're coming from all over the world.
They're coming from all over the world, and we don't know how they were raised. That we don't know if they have any interest in what really is the American dream, which is assimilation to American life. It's if you look at what's going on the streets right now, it seems like there's a very high percentage of people who came here with no interest in assimilation. And that's very scary. They have no interest in assimilating to American life. In fact, it seems like a lot of people came here with an interest in destruction of American life from the inside. You have people in Congress who frankly are, Rashida Tlaib has been absolutely outrageous in her language and in her positions. And you could say it's anti-American. I mean, the things that she's spreading, for example, just on Twitter alone, are anti-American. She knows they're false. She knows Israel didn't bomb a hospital, and she leaves it up on Twitter. This is the type of thing that the Soviet Union would do, spreading misinformation, when you would have government officials spread misinformation and everyone knew it wasn't true, but no one, what are you supposed to do in a communist country? It's very scary to see that us even approach something like that, where it's okay Congress, failed to censure her, which is outrageous, outrageous. She's spreading false propaganda. You could say anti-Israel. I think it's anti-American propaganda as well.
Yeah, and it's amazing because people like her want to empower the bureaucracy further to censor speech, but only speech that, of course, goes against her narrative. But you brought up a key point with this idea of assimilation. And we have to look inward at not you and I personally, but ourselves, where somewhere along the way, we changed. We went from the melting pot and assimilation to this idea that, quote unquote, diversity is our strength, which is a myth, and that it's no longer about people coming here and conforming to American culture and values, adopting part of American culture and values. Now it's America must actually bow down to other cultures. Do you see that as part of the problem that's been pushed throughout our society, dividing everyone up into groups and actually pushing this anti-American idea that we don't belong in this giant melting pot?
Well, I think real diversity is a strength. The diversity that, I think I'm a little older than you, but the diversity that probably you and I both learned about when we were kids in school, that is a strength. But we both know that's not what they're talking about nowadays. Diversity means something totally different than it did when we were kids. The diversity that I believe in is actual diversity, that you don't discriminate based on the color of someone's skin. You don't discriminate based on someone's religion. You don't discriminate based on any of these protected characteristics. That is, my parents are both immigrants. My grandparents were all immigrants. They escaped communism. My entire family escaped communism to come here and spoke to us about what communism was. And they were so proud when they got legal American citizenship. And it wasn't easy. I mean, to go through the process. They did it. They were proud. They assimilated. We assimilated. I've assimilated. I didn't know. Nobody in the history of my family came here to destroy America. They came here and they thanked America and were grateful for America. I'll tell you something very quick. My grandfather, I always thought my grandfather had the hardest life of anybody I ever knew. And I was speaking to my mother about it because he survived the Holocaust. They had a lot of money somehow back in Romania where they came from. They were very well to do. And then the Holocaust happened, and they eventually escaped communism in Romania to come to America. And he spent the rest of his life working the checkout counter in a deli. This is a guy who was a rich guy, owned restaurants, was very well to do. And I said to him, he had such a hard life. Well, I was just commiserating with my mom. And my mother said to me, I always thought that, but when he was dying, he said to me, I've had the greatest life that anybody could ever have. And I was shocked to hear that. I'd never heard that before a few weeks ago. And I said, wow, why did he say that? And my mother said she was shocked too. A Holocaust survivor, someone who was tortured, and he lost his whole family. He had 7 brothers who were murdered. He came back to his house after the Holocaust. His parents were dead. His 7 brothers were dead. So he had nobody. He had nobody left from his entire family. And he said, look what America gave me. He said, look what I have. I have you. I have another son. I have my grandchildren. And I love all of them. And I got this all in America. And this is a guy who worked for minimum wage the rest of his life, because he wasn't qualified in America to do anything besides that. And he loved America, and he loved that America gave him freedom. And that's amazing. And the people today, look in contrast to the people today, the way they treat what America gives us. It's so disgraceful and so unappreciative.
Well, it's stories like that actually humble you. I mean, when you really hear a story like that. And I think that a big part of the problem is that Americans, particularly of a younger generation, and including my generation, we haven't really had to sacrifice. I mean, honestly, we've had things pretty good. We've lived through the most peaceful time in world history. Life is good, economy good. We have all these luxuries in our life that in most other countries people can't afford, and everything came to us simple. So without that sacrifice, without those difficulties in life, it tends to cloud our judgment. And I think that's what we're seeing. And it doesn't help that we have a failed education system that actually pushes anti-Americanism, anti-Semitism. Only 13% of students are proficient in American history, only 22% proficient in American government. The overwhelming majority can't name one concentration camp from World War II. They don't know that Hitler was democratically elected. How do we begin to fix the education system so that the students actually get an understanding, but more importantly, appreciation for Western culture, Western civilization, the United States, everything that the United States did, and the totality of American history, both the good and the bad?
Yeah, what's the, I don't know who coined the phrase, you can vote your way into socialism, but you got to shoot your way out of it. And no one's teaching these students what socialism really is, what communism really is. How do we get out of it? Holy cow. I mean, you're asking the billion
Loaded
dollar, if I
question.
had the
Yeah.
question to, yeah, if I had the answer to that, I'd be probably under capitalism. I'd be rich if I could solve that problem, how to educate people properly. Well, I tell you, I think we have to secure the border. I think I think it's becoming more and more clear that even from Democrats now, finally, I think they're starting to realize, holy cow, what did we do? Because we didn't even look to see who any of these people are. And now you're getting admissions from our intelligence agencies that we have no idea. They're worried about terrorist threats on our soil right now because of the unfettered immigration. And I'm a big fan of immigration. Again, my entire family is immigrants. Like, I am a huge fan of immigration, but not completely unfettered, with no rule of law and no no way to filter and understand who's coming in here. I think that's a huge part of it, is reining in immigration to a reasonable level. Definitely take in asylum seekers who are legitimate and who want to come here and who want to work. But I think the demographics in the country have changed so dramatically. And that is I think the biggest part of it is the unfettered, unchecked immigration.
Now, are you hopeful that people's eyes have begun to open as to the college campuses and the radicalism that we're witnessing? I mean, I'm happy that the donor class has now finally started to pull back their funds, because money does talk. And if you want to change a college's behavior, start pulling back the money, they'll change their behavior real quick. But are you optimistic that we're going to see a change now that pretty much the campuses have exposed themselves for radicalization institutes, what they become, and that may be the beginning to foster the change in the society?
I'm worried about our future, to be honest. I really am
Come
worried.
on, we're supposed to have an optimistic tone.
Yeah, I'd like to say that I'm optimistic. I don't know which way this is going to go. Do I think that the next couple of elections are going to have a correction? I do, personally. Do I think long term we're in good shape? I'm not sure about that, because again, this doesn't seem to be slowing down.
Oh, it's speeding up.
Right, and that's a problem. And so how do you turn that tide? I mean, you can't undo. Right, the ketchup is already out of the bottle, or the toothpaste is already out of the bottle to some degree. And there comes a point where there's, like Malcolm Gladwell writes about, a tipping point where you can't undo it anymore. It's too far gone. It's happened in Europe in many countries. And I really worry. I really worry that, are we too far gone? There was a point 10 years ago we could have course corrected very easily. I am hopeful about what you said, that I 100% agree that a lot of decent people, you saw the polls that have been coming out recently about Trump destroying Biden in these the swing states. Yeah. And I think I really do think that's because they realize immigration is a huge part of it, the unfettered immigration. I think that's a huge part of it. I think people realize that this was not the only reason that they didn't want a wall or a normal process, is because Trump wanted one. It wasn't based on ideology, because before Trump was elected, the Democratic Senate voted for a fence on the border. They knew that, open borders means you don't have a country, really. It's not, there's no border, there's no country. So this wasn't even an ideological thing from the Democratic side. It only became something that was something to fight about because Trump wanted it. I mean, that's the truth, because Democrats always supported borders, always supported a fence. You want to call it a fence or a wall, you want to play semantics, that's what they were doing. That's ridiculous. They wanted a border. They wanted enforcement of a border. And it only changed because of Trump. So I don't know. Are we too far gone? For your sake, for your podcast, I'll say yes, I'm optimistic. I hope that people are starting to see the damage that's been done and that we need to course correct. And I just hope that it's not too late.
Professor Lax, I really appreciate you coming on, taking the time to speak to the audience, and everyone's got to go to campusreform.org, check it out. And I'm moving towards more optimism just because I need it in my life, right? I mean, I already lost all my hair because of the pessimism, so I got to move towards optimism. But I looked at, we've been through challenging times before. We were able to overcome. I do understand the mindset of Americans and American culture has changed, but hopefully we could shift it back. So I want to keep the conversation with you going on. I'd love to have you back. Thank you so much for coming.
Thank you. And please tell your viewers and your listeners to visit and follow Safe Campus on X or Twitter, whatever they're calling it nowadays.
And we will have the
support.
links up that people could get to there. So I really appreciate it. That's
Thank
great.
you so much.
Because we do need safety. No student should ever have to feel threatened by expressing their opinion on a college campus, whether they're Jewish students, whether they're Italian students, or just all of us Americans. As Americans, we shouldn't have to feel unsafe on campus to express our opinions. And I think it's disgraceful that that's what college campuses have become.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it.